everyone, welcome back for another weekend jewelry school. I'm Melissa Muir. In this video, I want to address a topic that comes up quite a bit, and that is work hardening your metal. Now, this can apply to wire, but it can also apply to sheet. We can apply this to thin pieces of wire, to very thick pieces of wire. So the process is going to be the same. Now, there are a number of tools that you can use for this, and it just depends on what you're doing as to which tool you use. A lot of people are going to ask, do we need to hammer it? Can I use a tumbler? And let's just talk a little bit about what happens in the process of work hardening your metal. And I'm also going to show you guys a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. So now you'll see right here I've got two different wires. One is already formed into an ear wire and the other is just a piece of wire at this point. Now this ear wire is sterling silver, it's 20 gauge. The other wire is copper, also 20 gauge. In this case, this ear wire has been worked and I have also hardened it. Now what happens is you have a crystalline structure inside of your metal. And this little crystalline structure has all these little atoms that are kind of lined up in a lattice work in rows and in columns. And what happens is as you begin to work with the metal, whether I'm bending it around with pliers, or maybe if I'm hammering it or anything like that, I'm compressing that space around each of those atoms. Now to harden an ear wire, the process of me making the ear wire in and of itself is going to make it harder. So you can see here that this copper wire, I can just take it and I can bend it very, very easily with my fingers. Well, if I wanted to make an ear wire, let's say, so first thing I would do is maybe turn a loop, and then maybe I'll turn another loop. And this is how I do a lot of that decorative ones, so that if I'm hanging a dangle on this or something. And then from there, I'm going to use a little larger area and bring this around. And this is a really ugly one because usually I use a couple pairs of pliers to do it, but it gives you the idea. Now at this point, my wire is a little bit stiffer. You can see that there's a little bit of a spring back on that. However, I'm able to very easily deform this ear wire with not much pressure at all. So what I would want to do on this ear wire is I would need to harden this. And to harden an ear wire, for me, I'm going to use a nylon mallet. And I'm just going to hammer this all over. And I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Now I'm not hitting hard, but it doesn't take a whole lot. Now if I do this, I have a lot more spring back. I'm still able to open and deform this. However, it takes a lot more effort now and it will tend to spring back a little bit to its position. So that is one thing. Now here's an example of that hardening in action. And you guys have probably all done this before. So here is a paper clip. And if I take this paper clip, and this paper clip is already fairly stiff because it's kind of hard already. Now if I take this and I bend it back and forth, it's going to break, just like you see here. And again, because what has happened now is I've taken that crystalline structure and I've compressed it so much that it can't move anymore and it has no choice but to break apart. Now when it comes to work hardening, people ask me all the time, what tools do you use? Well, you just saw that I used a nylon hammer, but then people will also ask about using a tumbler. Now a tumbler is going to work harden a little bit, but it is going to be microns thick and only on the surface. You are never going to get a really good deep hardening of your metal just by throwing it into a tumbler. A tumbler is going to be used to maybe burnish your material, not necessarily harden. So while it does harden that outer layer, it's not enough to get deeper into it. So while you might notice a little bit more stiffness with an ear wire, it is still going to be quite pliable. The best way to do that, if you can, is either with some pliers or with a hammer. So let's say that maybe I have a design that is going to be a little bit more complex, and I don't necessarily want to hammer this. So in this case, I have 4 different loops that kind of overlap each other, and it's not something that I want to hammer. So what I can do is I can take a pair of flat nose pliers, and then I can come in and just harden each of these areas. I can get in, and if I have a hard time getting into another area, maybe I can take a pair of chain nose pliers and get into that as well. And all I'm doing is just giving a nice little squeeze on this metal, and what's happening there is it is now compressing that metal down. Just like so. And at this point, now my metal is much stiffer. You can see that I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm having a much more difficult time getting this metal to move. So we definitely have some hardening that happened, 1 while I was forming this, but then 2 when I went in and I pinched that. So let's say again that maybe we're going to make another ear wire. Like so. Now you saw that I used a nylon hammer before, but what happens if we use a metal hammer? Now the metal hammer is going to do 2 things. 1, it is definitely going to harden. Anytime you pinch your metal in between 2 pieces of steel, and that can be the steel from the hammer face and the steel of a bench block, you are definitely going to be hardening, but you're also going to be reshaping. So if I come up here and I do this right here where that ear wire goes through my ear, I need to be careful because I will stretch that metal out. And again, it's not going to take a whole lot, but now, and I don't know if you guys can see this on the video or not, but I have thickened it this way. I've thinned it out from like the profile front to back, but top to bottom, it has now gotten thicker, but I also have much more hardness on this. Notice that this is not deforming when I come in here and do this. So that's another option that you can do as well. Just come in with a light hammer tapping and you can do that. Now you can leave a texture on there, you can forge things out, but it is going to harden this. Now here's an example of a wire that has gone through the rolling mill. This started out as a very thick gauge, and at this point, while I can deform it, it is very difficult to do so because that crystalline structure has been set much stronger than any of the others, and it's also thicker, so it's going to work harden much faster. So we have a couple of different things there. Now, is it possible for me to take something that is super hard already, like you can see that this is very stiff, is it possible for me to take this and make it pliable again and what we would call soft? Yes, and what you're going to need is a torch to do this. So here I just have that metal on there. I'm going to ignite my torch, and I'm just going to bring this in here. And with different metals, you're going to have different cues as to when you've hit a stage of annealing. Now on the copper, what I'm looking for is for the oxidation to stay away when my torch hits it. So you can see now that I've got some oxidation happening. You can see the colors that are on there. And what I want to do is I want to watch as I run my torch over this. One of the things that I look for is for my copper to look like it's clean. And then at that point, I know that I have hit an annealing temperature. So see how it's now kind of black, but when I run my torch over it, it looks like it's clean. That's what I'm looking for. So here I now have that at a good temperature. I'm going to quench this into a bowl of water, just so you guys can see this here. Now I'm going to take this, put it in my bowl of water. It doesn't all completely fit, so I'm going to make sure that everything is in there. Once I've done that, it is totally fine to hold. And now you'll see, look at how easy that is to bend. Took nothing at all. And as I do this, and now already it has become much more stiff. So it does not take a lot to harden your wire. You guys can see that's a lot more stiff now. It does not take much to harden it, especially when it's thicker. So what you saw when I hit that metal with the torch, that molecular structure kind of spreads back out again, and that's why it becomes soft. Even though you don't physically see the metal getting thicker or anything like that, those molecules are now relaxing and they are ready to be hammered again or manipulated or moved or whatever else the case might be, and then it will once again constrict and become stiff and hard. So there you guys kind of have it in a nutshell. Hammers are going to be really good. Rolling mills. Anytime I roll my metal through a rolling mill, you guys have heard me talk about if I'm going to roll out an ingot, I'm going to roll it through the mill a couple of times and then I need to anneal it and then I can come back and do it again. And that's because, again, in order for something to be able to stretch, you need to have the ability to do that. And if you have a compressed crystalline structure, it's not going to do that. So hardening your metal can be done with pliers, pinching it in between those steel tips of your pliers. It can be done with nylon or steel hammers. It can be done just by manipulating the wire with tools, whether you're just bending it. It doesn't even have to be tools. You guys saw what I did with my fingers on that thicker wire. And then you can also take it and anneal it again, and that is by the process of hitting it with a torch to heat that up, relax that crystalline structure, and you're good to go. So I hope that helps answer that question. As always, if you guys have more questions, please leave them down in the comments, and I'm always here to answer those for you. If you're liking this video series, please be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so that you get the notifications when I put out new videos, and give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment, and I'm always happy to hear any of your feedback. Have a wonderful weekend, you guys, and today is Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day. We'll see you guys again soon.